Creativity and community are absolutely vital in challenging times. Creativity is also consistently named one of the top skills of the 21st century, especially with the advent of AI. Welcome to Syncreate, a show where we explore the intersections between creativity, psychology, and spirituality. We believe everyone has the capacity to create. Our goal is to demystify the process and expand the boundaries of what it means to be creative. What holds us back? Why do we get stuck? And how can we fully embrace our creativity? We talk with visionaries and change makers and everyday creatives working in a wide range of fields and media, from the arts to science, technology, and business. We aim to illuminate the creative process, from imagination to innovation and everything in between. I'm Melinda Rothaus, and I help individuals and organizations bring their dreams and visions to life.
I'm Charlotte Gulick, and I'm a writer, educator, and writing coach. Melinda and I are the co-authors of a book on the creative process, also called Syncreate. At Syncreate, we're here to support your creative endeavors. If you have an idea for a project or a new venture and you're not sure how to get it off the ground, visit us at syncreate.org. Our book, now available in both print and audiobook format, walks you through the stages of the creative process so you can take action on your creative goals. We offer resources, creative process tools, and coaching to help bring your work to the world.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Syncreate podcast. We're happy you've joined us today. And today we're going to be talking about a light little topic, the role of the artist in society. So I think in these divisive times we're living in, it's been a lot on my mind, and I think on your mind and many people's minds, like what can we do? And how can we as artists and creatives be of benefit to the wider world? So what is the role of the artist? And of course, this is an age-old question that has been addressed probably since the beginning of human consciousness, but we're going to tackle it here today. So, some people have talked about artists as kind of the canary in the coal mine, like the ones who are really, really sensitive to what's going on in the wider world and maybe seeing things before other people see them and sensing them and maybe expressing what they're feeling in the zeitgeist, perhaps before others are aware of it. Also, people have talked about how artists not simply respond to what's happening in society, but also that we have the capacity to envision what do we want the world to be like and to even shape that. Think about all the science fiction writers who at the time they were writing these outlandish things that then later came into being. Some technologies developing directly as a result of these science fiction writers going like, what if this thing were possible, right? And also as artists and creatives, we can help others maybe think differently, see differently, feel differently. Art is a very powerful medium, whatever genre you're working in. It has the capability to touch people at a deeper emotional level. And I was just looking at this quote from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, said that no artist tolerates reality. So speaking to the transformational power of art and creativity, I have to thank Euro for that, for turning me on to Nietzsche's work on the artist in society. So again, the arts have the power to speak to people's experiences and emotions in a deeper way. So thoughts, Charlotte?
Well, yes, I totally agree with everything you're saying. And I'm also thinking about person who might not define themselves as a capital A artist and
Absolutely.
thinking that, things are so big right now that do I have permission as a lowercase a artist,
Yeah.
even if I love myself, use that term for myself. Do I have a right? Do I have a place? Do I have entitlement? And we want to say definitely yes, because we need um, all voices to imagine what's possible. And that art has its role beyond what we think sometimes. There's what's the phrase that art is there to um, comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. I think that's
Yes, love it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. So like that's I think where we are right now. And at Syncreate, as you say, like we really want people to feel empowered to call themselves artists and not have that tied to a product, but to
Mhm.
have that tied to a way of being, tied to a way of thinking. And how do we imagine what could be better? And saying yes to our ideas rather than no.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I was just having a chat this morning on Instagram with a friend of mine, Graydon Keller. I'll give him a shout out. He's been doing a lot of writing on LinkedIn and Substack, and he wrote a very powerful piece about Ukraine that he just published,
Mm.
and this thing that's been going around like, oh, everyone's saying Ukrainians are so resilient, but that actually can do a disservice. Right?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, but what are we doing sitting here on the sidelines? Like, how can we actually get involved? And instead of just saying, wow, they're so strong, like, let's help them in some way. Um, and so I was like, thank you for this piece and for everything that you're doing. And he was saying something along the lines of like, "Well, I do it because I feel strongly that I wanna put these ideas out there and not for any specific, end goal or return or whatever." He happens to actually have quite a large following, but, he's writing about what he's passionate about and not just what he thinks is gonna be popular or marketable or so forth, you know? So, but I
Well,
think, well, just back to what you were saying, I'm going to kick it back to you. But like, okay, so maybe this lowercase a artist or a creative who, like we've talked in recent episodes about like how can we, be of benefit in our local communities. Like, what are small ways that we can exercise what we're talking about here?
when I think we have to be clear about the goals, and I think you know there's so many layers to it. Is the goal to just keep my own humanity alive in a time that feels like that's somehow scandalous or a comfort? Like, no, I'm going to draw or paint or dance even while terrible things are going on. And that's partly how we keep our individual humanity awake and alive, not at the dismissal um, or at the like ignorance of what's happening for other people, but that we don't become small. I think that's the
Yes.
main thing. Like we don't become constricted. And maybe that's with the ingredients that you have, you get creative or you sing in public. Like that, there are the ways to keep ourselves like bright spots that I think are really, really important. Um, and then I think to your point, like maybe that's, and we've talked about this before, like maybe you have people over and everyone brings a favorite poem and you read it together. Or each person reads one. And that we think about what passes through time. Yes, there's intergenerational trauma, but there's also art, song, poem, dance, so many things. It's like, how are we keeping ourselves in fullness in difficult times. So I think that
Yeah.
those are small things that we could do.
And my mind is going to like, okay, what did people do before mass media? Before there
Mhm.
even was an opportunity to like broadcast things out on a large level. People sat around the campfire and sang and shared stories or, composed poems or made art for themselves and their families and their immediate communities. Like it wasn't about trying to get famous and make a lot of money, like we as humans have been doing this for again, as long as we've been humans, maybe before, you know?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to say, it's so vital. It's not, um, secondary. Um, and I think about Ismet Prikic is if I'm saying his last name right, he is a writer who was conscripted into the Bosnian War, and one of the things that he did is that he joined an acting troupe,
Mm,
and they got together and staged plays that were, um, uh activists and community centered and kind of, like, on the fly or, illegal s and that's part of, like that's how he sustained himself, um, when he had to do with these had to be, in situations that were costing humanity. He was making sure that his humanity was staying alive. Um
yes. Yeah. So, like, truly everyday creativity, as we often talk about, um, but, like, as activism, even in a really local context.
I have so many friends that are singing right now,
Yeah.
in different ways, and it is what is sustaining them. They're with other people, and like it's for them, it's almost sacred,
Mhm. Absolutely.
to be together and to share voices. Like it's how they're getting through.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever gets you through, right?
Hmm.
Um Yeah, so, when we were kinda talking about, like, brainstorming about this episode, you mentioned a quote from Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan author who actually was a professor of mine at NYU, so I was excited that you brought him up. He passed away recently, but, beloved author, and this quote is, "Imagination is the central formative agency in human society. It's because we can imagine different futures that we can struggle against the present state of things." So, we're going to be talking more about the power of imagination in a future episode coming up. But again, I think that speaks to this same idea that, like, if we can imagine a different way of being, then that's the first step to bringing it into being.
And I think this sounds really casual, and I don't mean it that way, but there's incredible power to the phrase, "Wouldn't it be nice?" And then, like,
Yes.
fill in the blank, and that is where creativity comes in, where we say that we are boundless in what is possible.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be nice? And then fill in the blank, that even like you're doing the dishes, you're driving your car, and letting that muscle of imagination and creativity stay really present and toned, I guess. Don't let it atrophy right now.
Yeah. It's that what if question that we talk about in our book, that initial phase of creativity, which is imagination and daydreaming and what's possible, like you said. So, our pro tip for today, as we've been discussing, is how to think about, like, consider, reflect on how your creations contribute to the wider world in a positive way, and perhaps help people to think and see differently. So, again, this doesn't have to be some high art concept kind of thing. How can your culinary creations nourish and enrich your family and friends in some positive way? There's so many ways that we express our creativity during our daily lives at home, at work, in our civic worlds. So, what does that look like for you?
Thank you for joining us today. Find and connect with us on YouTube and social media under Syncreate. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and leave us a review.
And we're recording today at Record ATX Studios in Austin, with Charlotte joining us from the Hudson Valley. The podcast is produced in collaboration with Mike Osborne at 14th Street Studios. Thanks so much for being with us, and see you next time.